Hi there, I'm Marissa Evangelista, one of MFA's gallery assistants, and I will be introducing our guest, Ed Praybe, who is one of our Paint Annapolis juried artists this year. Ed earned his BFA in 2004 from Maryland Institute College of Art and his MFA from the New York Studio School in 2012. He has taught and lectured in several schools such as Anne Arundel Community College and Wayne Art Center. He is primarily a studio still life painter, but today we get to explore his landscape work as well. We'll be learning more about his interest in, quote, the tension between concreteness of the motif, the land literally underfoot, and the ephemeral effects of the light across the scene.
All right. Thank you, Marissa, and thanks for your help, which has been wonderful during the Will Talk series. And in the new format, what we're going to do is select an artist either from one of our current juried shows, or in this case, with Ed Praybe, who is one of the juried artists into our big annual event, Paint Annapolis. This is a major event for us and for the arts community in Annapolis. We're very proud of the quality of artists like Ed that we've been able to attract and our jurors have selected. So today is just going to be a short introduction to Ed and his work. And for all of you who see the video or see the program, you'll have an idea of what kind of thing you can see at Paint Annapolis. And of course, there's more about that event on the MFA website and in our emails to people who are on our email list. So, Ed, welcome and thank you for subjecting yourself to this. And I'm very excited to look at your work and talk about it with you. Well, this is a perfect example. And of course, I saw it and Ed selected these images. Your background is fairly standard in the sense that you've studied at some very fine art schools, and now you're a teacher and an exhibiting artist. My question, while we're looking at this image, is: do you consider yourself to be a realist painter?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm very tied to um representing reality in some way. And all the slides I have here are, since we're thinking about Paint Annapolis plein air, are completely from life. So there's no studio reworking, and this is a larger painting. It's all from life. So I'm trying to capture something of the reality of the situation in front of me. There's a level of interpretation happening. There's always some kind of transition from what you're looking at to internalizing to them putting it and reorganizing it back into the structure of the painting on the canvas. So there is this kind of underlying abstraction that I'm interested in the structure of a painting. But yeah, definitely, I would consider myself a realist for the most part.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what I expected you to say, because as an academic, as an art historian, but also as a photographer, this whole question of realism versus abstraction has been one that artists and art historians have talked about, sometimes very vigorously, for the last 150 years. An academic of the 17th, 18th, or 19th century would, of course, not consider this to really be a successful realist painting, but to most of us, including me, and obviously yourself, this is a very successful painting. And I suspect that what you just said about sort of trying to get into the atmosphere and the whole feeling of painting a subject like this is what you're really more emphasizing, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, getting especially in the landscape, kind of the sense of the light, how it might unify a scene or something like that, rather than, maybe meticulously doing botanical renderings of each one of these flowers or these plants that are happening. I think they're very specific in the way that I'm addressing them, maybe with touch or color. But you're right, it doesn't have that kind of traditional academic sense of realism to it. it's more of trying to get to the reality of the maybe the humidity in the air, the atmosphere that
Mm-hmm.
the light is
Mm-hmm.
casting, or something like that. The sense of the distance between me and the
Yeah.
motif.
My question to you personally, individually, is what do you feel is more important as you paint? Is it your personal reaction, emotionally, subjectively, or is it objective in the sense that you are, as you said, trying to capture the specific atmospheric qualities or the way light has evoked color in the different materials?
That's kind of the core of it, isn't it? It starts maybe with my emotional reaction to something that I'm seeing, but then once I begin the painting, it's about maybe being very specific about what I'm actually looking at once I get into the process of trying to make some kind of physical thing out of what I'm seeing. So I think there's a lot of give and take between those two ways of thinking. I'll be struck by a scene, and that's why I want to paint it. So it might be
Mm-hmm.
something that's more visceral, emotional, not quite logical. And then as I begin to paint, I'm trying to figure out, how is this shadow working against this piece of light, or how is this
Mm-hmm.
form butting against this other form? And it becomes very much about the specifics of what's in front of me. And then also kind of coupled with the limitations of maybe my own skill, or even the time limit that I have, how might I have to paraphrase certain things that are happening in order to most accurately describe
Yeah.
what I want to relate about this scene that struck me in a way that I want
Yeah.
to show it
Yeah.
to others.
Well, this painting, even though when one sees it for the first time, it's obviously very concrete. It's very real. Uh, as I look at it more for a longer period of time and examine it more closely, it's a very complex painting. There's a lot that's going on here in terms of form, color, light, composition. And so, as you just described it, that's a lot. That's a lot to take in. You did a lot to present it to us. Is it fair for a viewer to look at it then and sort of try to discern, well, what was Ed think? What was this painter really thinking about? What's it? Does he really like these little daisies? Or, I mean, should we be looking for that more subjective aspect? Or are you really trying to uh, convey the concreteness and the realness and the visual qualities?
I mean, personally, when I'm responding to it, it's really about that kind of solidifying the visual in some way. But once the painting is out there and I put it into the world, whatever kind of reading, obviously, I'd welcome that. Whatever kind of subconscious thing that I may have actually put in there,
Yeah,
it may come into the reading and how people respond to that. How
yeah,
whatever my attitude toward the flowers might be, or that particular bush or tree, that might,
yeah.
the faces sometimes that you see in a clump of trees or clouds or something, that might play into people's reaction to it.
Well, I think you said that very nicely, and I'm glad we're looking at one of your works. In my career as a museum educator, people were often, very frequently, they wanted to ask, well, what did the artist mean? What was the artist thinking? And I always refer to Picasso, who deliberately refused to be expansive or was deliberately deceptive because he, as most of the early 20th century modernists said, no, it's what you see, it's what you experience when you
Yeah,
encounter the art. It's important. And I think that's what you were saying.
absolutely. Yeah, and it makes me think of, I think it was maybe Dylan Thomas. He was doing a reading or something, and he finished the poem, and someone said, "Well, what does it mean?" And he looked down at the paper and he just read it again.
Yeah,
To,
perfect.
it's what you make of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. When I first began to exhibit my photographs, you know how you've probably done this. You kind of wander around the gallery and you don't want to let people know that it's your work, but you're listening to see what they say.
Yeah.
And the first couple of times I had the experience, somebody would say something and I would think, no, 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 no. But that's not the point. You know, that's what they saw, and that they
Yeah.
saw anything is good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That they're looking at it at all. Yeah.
yeah.
Is a good thing for sure.
This is much more forceful, I think. This is a much more assertive painting than the one that we just looked at. Um, could you just respond to that in however you think is appropriate? And tell me I'm crazy if I am.
No, I think it's maybe part of it has to do with the stripped down nature of the subject. You know, it's the base of this one tree against a more expansive space. So it has this maybe more um, monolithic kind of presence in the space, whereas the previous painting was a much more complex grouping of, plants and trees and flowers.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think it, almost has that kind of figure ground kind of figure in a space kind of thing
Mhm.
with the tree, and that it gives it a kind of different presence, I think, than something that is much more of a complex
Yeah.
group.
The light also looks more intense,
Hmm.
as though you're in bright sunlight and you're dealing with the deep shadows under the branches of a tree. Is that going on there?
Exactly. Yeah, I was walking around this spot and I just really loved the way the light, it was early in the morning, was just
Yeah.
blasting at
Yeah.
this tree. And I thought it would be great to just, I ran and grabbed my paints and just
Yeah.
tried to knock it out, in just a couple of hours while the light was still there.
Yeah.
Just because the nuances of the colors, even within those very blasted up high lights, was really interesting.
There's two things that I want to follow up with, and one is this painting particularly seems a little more abstract, even a little cubist
Hmm.
in the way forms are broken and emphasized, and they're connected with one another. Or who are some of the artists that have influenced you, and does it go that far towards abstraction?
Oh, definitely. Cezanne, the kind of the father of Cubism.
Hmm.
But then, even going, I love people like Braque, Picasso, Bonnard. You know,
Oh yeah,
there's a great Bonnard show right now that I just found
Phillips.
out about. Yeah, that I have to go
Yeah.
see. He's someone that's on that line between, abstraction and representation. Yeah, so I go back and forth between painters like that and then, traditional Constable. Constable's a great just
Oh,
workhorse for a landscape
yeah.
painter. You can,
Yeah.
so the kind of marriage between an approach like that and then something that's maybe more rooted in a modernist kind of tradition is kind of interesting to me. And sometimes nature will help you. The patterns of the shadows and light in this scene was very abstract. It was really about a kind of high contrast,
Yes.
almost
Yes.
black and white kind of thing that was happening.
Do you ever paint cloudscapes,
I do.
skies?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So this sort of leads me to one of the questions that I think is important. I ask all of the artists that are participating in Paint Annapolis that I might do a program with. Is this the kind of thing that you might produce in Paint Annapolis?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have some locations because you are local, so you must know our area well? Do you have some places that you hope you'll be able to get to and paint during Paint Annapolis?
I do have quite a few favorite spots in the area. They're more kind of toward the more landscapey versus cityscape kind of spots. But there's a park that a lot of people don't know about on the other side of the Naval Academy Bridge, Jonas Green, that is
Oh yeah,
usually,
yeah,
that's usually in the map of Paint Annapolis. So I love painting out there. There's a lot of different views out there.
yeah. I like photographing there because the river changes so much depending
Yeah.
on the weather, and then you have the bridge, this big massive object.
Yeah.
And of course, the light and the atmosphere acts around, moves around that. And I noticed in your Baker portfolio and in some of the other things that are on the internet that you do a lot of still life. And of course, we've seen different sorts of natural subjects, but you don't do the figure very often.
Not as often as I used to. Yeah, it's funny. I started as a mostly figurative painter, and I always kind of done still lives, and then I did a lot of landscapes for a long time, and then I've recently kind of come back to a lot of still life painting. But I really only paint people that I know, that I'm very close to, that have access to. So my wife, I paint often, but I don't produce a lot of those paintings anymore. And
Yeah.
I've started conscripting my son to pose for me, but he's he's not quite 3 yet, so I have to.
Oh,
I'm really working on my speed painting, so I'm hoping that's going to help me with Paint Annapolis because he's all over the place.
as they get older and older, they become more and more difficult to even take a photograph of. They're not very cooperative, so I hope you have better luck. This is a beautiful and very subtle still life, I think. Would you say this is typical of what you're doing, or was there something? Well, the most basic question really is, did you arrange this still life, or is it completely accidental?
Yes, it's very purposefully arranged, but the arrangement evolves through the process. So very different than landscape where I can't uproot trees and move them around. But the still life I love because I can I'll start off with an idea and it might not quite work, and then I can move something and move something else, and so this went through many phases where things kind of inched into place.
Was there a consistent sort of thing you were trying to get out or add in that made you rearrange it so much?
Yeah, I'm always kind of looking for these through lines that connect, especially in something that's very complicated. As subtle as the tonality might be, there are a lot of forms and folds and different little nuanced things in here. And I'm trying to find connective points that kind of can run through and tie everything together and create some kind of structure underneath the seeming kind of casual, maybe chaotic kind of feel of the layout.
That quite honestly sounds a lot like the way Cezanne talked about his still life and about his painting in general. So when you do a still life, once again, it's not so much the surface, it's the structure, it's the composition, it's you as an artist building a particular image.
Yeah. The still life evolves as the image evolves, and it's
Yeah.
yeah. There's a kind of give and take, and it's really about the kind of control that I can exert over that
Yeah.
situation, and exploit to hopefully make a painting that works
Yeah.
as best as I can.
I'm particularly attracted to the subtlety of color and light and shadow. But I'm glad that you selected this for our conversation because I did want to let the viewers know that your accomplishments as a painter go beyond just landscape, even though you're probably not going to find something like this that you're going to be painting during the Paint Annapolis event. And I really have enjoyed talking with you, even though it's been a brief conversation and looking at your work. And I am truly very interested in anticipating seeing what you produce in Paint Annapolis. And I just wonder if there's anything, because we are running out of time, that you wanted to add or introduce to our conversation before we wrap up.
Just want to say thanks for inviting me. It's been nice to sit and chat, and I'm really looking forward to um, painting, painting Paint Annapolis officially. I painted around Annapolis quite a bit, but
Yeah.
to actually be a juried artist is exciting. So I'm looking forward to the event, and yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm excited.
And if you have a few minutes, I actually have a question for you. And it relates to your connection with perceptual painters and motifs. So I
Sure.
read your interview on the Perceptual Painters site, and I noticed that other similar painters like Peter Van Dyke and my conversations with Matt Close that the word motifs comes up a lot in discussion, more
Mm.
frequently than any other representational painting group that I've encountered. Can you talk about your connections with motifs, what they signify to you, if they've always been a part of your educational background, or do you think it's more specific to perceptual painters?
I mean, I use it kind of, when I say motif, I kind of use it as a catch-all for specific genres. So, I mean, for me, it's more like I'll say the motif of the still life. But then within that, there might be different kind of motifs, kind of casual
Mhm.
found still life or a
Yeah.
structured still life or something like that. And I think it's just a way of classifying, the certain subject matter that you might be working with. I mean,
Right.
I use it kind of as a phrase versus subject because the motif for me might not be the same as the subject. The subject of the painting might be color or something, and the motif is maybe something more solid for me. And there are a couple interpretations of how artists might use that term, but
Of
yeah, it
course.
does, it
Yeah.
does come up with us perceptual
Yeah.
painters for sure. Yeah.
Well, great, great. It was nice meeting you and talking with you. And as I said, I'm looking forward to seeing your work in Paint Annapolis. I've participated as a juror and as an observer, admirer in Paint Annapolis for many years now. And I think it's a wonderful event for our organization, the Maryland Federation of Art, and for the city of Annapolis, and for the artists like Ed, who are accomplished enough to be juried in. So, Marissa, thanks for your technical support. And Ed, again, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your work with us, and hope to see you both and many of the people that see this at Paint Annapolis.